All right, friends, welcome back to Park Junkie. Todd C. coming at you with another National Park Newscast. That's right, all the news that's fit to print from your national parks. It's a frigid 27 degrees outside today, so we're doing the newscast from the great indoors, and we're coming at you with some news stories right about now. All right, friends, some important stories coming out of our national parks this week. But first, I want to take this opportunity to tell you about this week's sponsor, ParkJunkie.com. If you'd like to support the work that I'm doing here on Park Junkie, you can do so by purchasing a sweatshirt, a t-shirt, maybe a coffee mug, or stickers. Started out with these basic designs that I've laid out just in time for the holiday season. So if you have somebody in your group of friends or family who's a Park Junkie fan, you can consider getting them some Park Junkie gear for the holidays this season. Christmas right around the corner. Let's not forget about the folks that we love, and let's not forget about our public lands. If you want to show your support for the Park Junkie Project and continued public access to public lands, do so by visiting the Park Junkie store. So as we're getting into this week's news here, let's look first at some areas where the National Park Service is seeking public comment. A lot of times these comments, I know that, they don't get a lot of feedback on these. Sometimes they do, but a lot of people probably throw in the comments that they don't really consider these. And I know they might not always consider these, but I think that if enough people start commenting on these, they don't have a choice but to at least take into account what's being said. I don't know how much of an influence public comment currently has on a lot of the policies that the Park Service is adopting. However, this move toward reservations in so many aspects of national parks today is an area where they do usually ask for public input. And I would really like to see more of us start commenting on this and participating in the public dialogue about what we can do to prevent this overly restrictive policies that are being put in. I mean, you cannot even drive into Rocky Mountain. You can't drive into Glacier National Park on the Going to the Sun Road. You couldn't drive into Yosemite the last couple of years without reservations that are made through rec.gov. Now, we're going to look into rec.gov pretty thoroughly here on the channel in the coming weeks here, and we're going to do kind of a deep dive onto how our funds are being used by rec.gov, because this is a private company, my friends, and it's very interesting. The first story that we have here today, it basically shows us exactly what's going on with that system. So let's get into that story right now. This comes out of South Carolina's Congaree National Park, just east of Columbia, South Carolina down there. I've been to this park a number of times. I've done some great canoe trips in Clear Creek, and I've camped in the Bluff Campground. And guess what? Nobody was there any time that I've ever camped there. But the park tells us via this press release that came out on December 1st of 2022 that Congaree National Park, I'm reading from the press release here, Congaree National Park will be increasing the fee for nightly campsite reservations in the park's designated front country campgrounds. They're moving a fee at the Bluff Campground from $5 to $10, the Longleaf Campground from $10 to $15, and the group site from $20 to $25 per night. Reservation rates will go into effect on January 1st. Now, there's no real reason for reservations to be necessary in Congaree National Park. Have you ever found the Congaree National Park campgrounds to be crowded? I don't think anyone's out there really fighting over campsite spaces in Congaree National Park. I think every time I've camped there, I may have seen one or two other people. So why do they even have this? Why isn't it first come, first serve? I don't know, but we're going to get into that. So, continuing with the press release, the purpose of increasing reservation fees is to enable the park to cover the cost of Congaree National Park's use of the National Reservation Service contract that is hosted at rec.gov. Rec.gov charges contractor line item costs ranging from $6 to $8 per reservation made through either the online reservation system or call center. Currently, the park assumes these costs, which are deducted from the fees collected for campsite reservations. So what they are saying right here is, we are increasing these fees because we are paying a private corporation to install a reservation system that we don't even need. This is what's going on here. And if you look at the rates, so they say that the contractor line item cost is between $6 and $8 per reservation on rec.gov. Yet they're only charging currently $5 a night for the Bluff campground. So the park is losing between $1 and $3 with every reservation it's made at the Bluff campground in Congaree National Park because they're using rec.gov. How is that sustainable? That's why they're looking to increase the fees on the campground. It's not so that they can put out more fire rings or update restroom facilities. This is so that they can pay a private company to do the job that rangers used to be able to do just fine in the parks. In fact, they used to have like a pay it on the site thing. You drop your money in the box. Now, I know sometimes that can lead to a problem, but with a simple campground host, that's taken care of, and you don't even pay campground hosts. So this is very interesting. This nightly reservation system that rec.gov has basically found a way to install through a number of parks is very concerning to me. I will give you an example from Yellowstone last summer, and I'll make it quick, and then we'll move on to our next story. But last summer, I did a hike out to, I was working in Yellowstone, as many of you know, and I worked there, and I went out to Heart Lake on an overnight backpacking trip, did Mount Sheridan the next day. I understood this rec.gov system to some degree, and I knew I've known for a long time that they were up to no good, so I've chosen not to use them. I don't enter parks that require reservations. I don't use their system to do anything that I can do through any other means. I did have to use them recently to access Furnace Creek and Arches. Excuse me, not Furnace Creek, the Fiery Furnace in Arches. However, that's the only time I've really used them in a long time. However, last summer I went into the ranger station. In order to avoid using rec.gov, I went to a physical ranger station at Bridge Bay there in Yellowstone. I went in to talk to a physical ranger and received a physical permit from his physical printer in the Bridge Bay Marina Ranger Station. I go in, I'm like, hey, I want to go out to Heart Lake. I was like, what campsites are available? He shows me, and I say, perfect, I'll take 8H1, and I'm going to go out there. He said, great. He's like, I need your email. I just gave him my email, didn't think about it. Well, as he's like, okay, it'll be $15. He gives me, I give him the $15. He gives me the receipt, and I look at the receipt. It says the permit fee is $5 and the reservation fee is $10. And I said, hey man, just a question about this. I was like, I didn't have a reservation. Why is there a reservation fee on here? And he's like, oh, that's the way we have to do it now. The park must run all of their backcountry permits through rec.gov. So this is a physical ranger at a physical ranger station handing me a physical permit from a physical printer, charging $5 for the permit. That's what the park gets, $5. Rec.gov is getting $10 off of that. Just to route this process through a computer in DC. I guess that's where they're headquartered. So that's where, I guess, this routes through DC, and it's, why on earth are we doing this? Why on earth would the park be doing this? The park could make so much more money just by issuing their own permits, but they're not doing that. I don't know. Sounds like, well, we'll get into that later. But we need to be aware of this, and we need to be aware that these fees that we're paying for these backcountry permits, for the reservations to get into our public lands, and for front country campsites, all of these, and I've seen so many of these being implemented here in the last year. The list goes on and on. Lawson Volcanic no longer accepts walk-in. You used to be able to go up to a kiosk out in the wilderness, just sign yourself into backcountry and hike out. This is not an overly crowded park. There's no reason, but yet somehow they're implementing a reservation system there through rec.gov to go into the backcountry of Lawson Volcanic. Preposterous. Torweep in Grand Canyon National Park. There's no one at Torweep. Now, on the website, they say that they do get overly busy on weekends sometimes. So what they do, they just implement a permit system for Torweep entrance, and it has to go through rec.gov. So if you drive out this 60-mile gravel road to get to Torweep, you have to have a reservation, and you can't get one from there because there's no service out there. It's 60 miles from the nearest road. So not only do they have Torweep locked down, they've got Kanab Point, Kelly Point, the entire 100 and some mile stretch of the north rim of the Grand Canyon on the Arizona Strip requires a permit. There's no one out there. Why are we doing that? We're going to look into all these stories coming up in future episodes of Park Junkie. But for now, we're going to move on to some other concerning stories. These, and the reason I bring up these seeking public comment stories is because I think we need to start putting our voice forward when it comes to these areas. One area of concern in the permit world and the continued fight for unfettered public access on public land is Rocky Mountain National Park. And you guys out there know that you are busy in Estes Park, Grand Lake on the other side. You guys are busy, no doubt about that. However, the park announces that they are seeking continued public engagement and input on the long-range day-use visitor access strategy. Rocky Mountain, one of those parks that has implemented a reservation system. You have to go through rec.gov to enter Rocky Mountain National Park. And this doesn't matter that you have a park pass, like a national parks pass or a veterans pass or an access pass, whatever you might have. You still need to get a reservation to enter the park, and you only can do that through rec.gov. So Rocky Mountain says they are hosting a virtual public meeting on Thursday, December 15th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And they've got one coming up before that. I'm sorry, I missed that one. December 6th, they're having a public open house in Estes Park at the Estes Park Museum there in Colorado, the east entrance to the park. It says this open house will provide an opportunity to drop in, meet with NPS. This is not a formal presentation, but it just invites the public to stop in and discuss this issue with park rangers on what looks to be kind of cool, like maybe a one-on-one discussion. Now, moving on, but their public meeting, that it will be a virtual public meeting from 6 to 7, December 15th. The webinar will provide opportunities for the public to learn more about the purpose of the project, key ideas, issues of concern. And it says that you'll be able to ask questions of NPS staff and get information. So you can participate in the meeting. I'll provide a link to that in the description below. Doesn't say that they're taking public comments at this time, but they will be taking public comments on this at some point. And when they do, we need to be making public comments. There are other options, my friends. If we want to limit the number of people heading into the gates of our national parks, there are other ways to do it. Yellowstone National Park last summer, with the reopening after the flood closures, showed us the perfect roadmap for that. And an entirely egalitarian method by which we could all access our national parks, an alternating license plate system during times of excess visitation. If we know that the lines are going to be preposterous and there's not going to be any parking, maybe we can agree that it's time to start limiting access to these places, but that doesn't mean we have to pay some private corporation to do this. Yellowstone, I don't know who was in charge of that decision. Cam Shawley, the superintendent up there in Yellowstone for 2022 during the floods there at the 150th anniversary, came up with the perfect idea in my mind. You just alternate license plates. And if you visit the national park area, on even days, even license plates can go in. On odd days, license plates can go in, and we can work together to make something like that happen where we don't have to sell our soul to the corporate devils. All right, my friends, let's move on to another area that is seeking public comment on the same tier. That's Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park out there in California. They'll be hosting 3 public meetings on the planning effort between December 2022 and January 2023. Monday, December 12th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, hosting a public meeting with records shared on the project webpage afterwards. That's an in-person meeting. And then they're also going to have an in-person meeting on Thursday, December 8th and Wednesday, January 11th. There will be a public comment period open from November 17th to January 17th of 2023. So they're seeking input because they have to through this Federal Lands Enhancement Recreation Act. They have to seek public input on this. They don't necessarily have to act on public input, but they do have to at least seek that public input. And if there's enough of us putting forth public input, they have to pay attention to this. I'm talking like thousands and tens of thousands of people need to be making comments on this. Sequoia Kings Canyon, I'll put a link to that down in the description below so you can comment on that between now and January 17th. Rocky Mountain, we already been through that. Acadia National Park up in Maine, that's right. They are inviting public comment on a proposed entrance fee increase. Here's the situation with Acadia. They are running their Cadillac Mountain reservations through rec.gov. Now, they want to increase the fee for this. They don't mention rec.gov anywhere in this press release. They say that these funds will be used locally. It says so here it goes. The vast majority of Acadia's entrance fee revenue is retained locally and used to fund the Island Explorer bus, along with addressing deferred maintenance needs in the park. Now, if those are the issues that are the money's going toward, I'm sure we can all sort of get behind that. But if you're paying rec.gov to start to clamp down and put chokeholds on all of our national parks, I don't want to support that. Their main reason they list, though, which is funny, I've seen this used a number of times as well, the new entrance fee It says the new entrance fee increase will bring Acadia National Park's entrance fees to be consistent with other iconic and highly visited national parks such as Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, and Yosemite. Their last increase in entrance fees was in 2018. So a lot of these parks, I've seen this argument used here before as well. It's like, well, and this is what Lawson used for their backcountry access. I saw this listed on their reasons. It was like, it's going to bring Lawson in accordance with what other parks are doing. So because all of these other parks are limiting backcountry access and giving their money to corporate entities, we should too. So be aware that this is that's a poor argument, in my opinion. But we need to be commenting on these things. If the fees are staying with the parks, I can get down with an increased entrance fee to a park. However, if it's not being increased for the use of the park, we need to be saying something about that. All right, my friends. Well, moving on in the stories as we're moving forward, Shenandoah National Park, they will be seeking public input in early 2023 concerning the suspension of their implemented pilot ticketing program. They too were using rec.gov to implement a ticketing system for hikers using Old Rag. Now, Old Rag, one of the best hikes on the east coast of the United States. It is a scrambling route right up to a stunning view over there on the eastern side of Shenandoah National Park. And early March of this year, they implemented a ticketing reservation system in order to reduce congestion and to increase visitor safety up there on this route. This press release goes on to say that the pilot limited this portion of the park to 800 people a day, and they have suspended that because it was the end of the pilot period. So what they'll do is they'll usually put in place a pilot period. They're going to be, over the next few months, gathering the data and examining the data, and then they will share the data with the public and seek public input from in early 2023. The information collected will help park staff decide if the ticketing system should be continued permanently or if the program needs to be modified. It doesn't even say just scrapped, it just says modified. So we need to be commenting on this, my friends. If you want to continue to have public access to your public lands, if you want your children to have continued unfettered access to public lands, and if you want their children's children to have continued unfettered access to public lands, we need to be paying attention to this, and we need to be making some comments. All right, friends, other areas where the Park Service is asking for input: North Cascades National Park, a brilliant park up there in Washington. Stellar area. I visited this one back in 2018, and this is one of the parks which showed me clearly why I'm opposed to any sort of reservation system. I had been to North Cascades once before for a quick backpacking trip, and I had a schedule on that one, so I couldn't just stick around. But I rolled in there in 2018 with no real plan, and I was able to summit a number of mountains: Sahali, Shuckson, went over Easy Pass, Gorge Lake, camped there at Gorge Lake Campground. Absolutely stellar. I pulled in there originally thinking I would spend 3 days in the park, and I had such an incredible experience in that park that I ended up staying there at that campground for 14 days. The ability to maintain a spontaneous sort of park experience is integral to our enjoyment of these public lands. And these public lands, as we know from the legislation setting aside Yellowstone National Park in 1872, was not only to provide for the preservation of that land for future generations, but it was also to provide for the land to be preserved for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. And I have sure benefited from and enjoyed these lands, so we need to be paying attention to these issues. And North Cascades, seeking public feedback on this one a bit different. National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced that they are initiating an environmental impact statement or study to evaluate options for restoring and managing grizzly bears in the North Cascades area. Now, the grizzly bear was an endemic species there. The last grizzly bear sighting in North Cascades National Park took place back in 1996. So the bears have not been seen for quite some time there in the North Cascades. In order to be a little better informed about what this means, we must understand the predator-prey relationship that we have out here in our wilderness areas. These grizzly bears and wolf packs that we have in our national parks, and we see them out ripping the heads off of elk or tearing apart a carcass of a deer or some other species of land mammal. These animals are are necessary to the health of those other species. So the predator is actually doing the prey a service by killing they're calling the weak, the old, and the sick. So once those animals are eliminated from the herds, the other members of that herd have more food, they're more able to sustain themselves in the wilderness environment because their numbers aren't as high. The perfect example of a study on this comes from Isle Royale National Park up there in northern Michigan with their wolf moose studies. What we found there is once the wolf numbers start to decrease, the moose numbers start to increase, and they become completely unsustainable, and they end up eating themselves out of their own habitat, and then they end up starving to death. So the wolves that are killing the old, the weak, and the sick among those species of animals are actually doing them a favor. So we need to be considering that as we look at this. And I know a lot of the biologists with the Park Service are well aware of these studies and well aware of what the relationship is between these wild animals. So understand that when you're making public comment, I'm sure that people in the local area up there have some concerns surrounding this issue. But the park there is proposing to reintroduce grizzly bears as what they term a 10J experimental population, which they say presents land managers with additional options, with a number of options for managing grizzly bear populations there in that area. It says that it would give ranchers and landowners further options for managing those species when they come onto their own land as well. So I don't know what that means, but if you want to look further into this story and to make some comments on this, I'll provide a link to this one as well in the description below. But man, I will say that I have enjoyed hiking through areas recently where I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time for a grizzly bear. But I do understand the importance of grizzly bears in the wilderness, but man, anyway, moving on. Next story that we're looking at here, this one comes from Glen Canyon National Recreation out there in southern Utah, northern Arizona. They are asking for public comment on a proposal to allow mountain biking on the Stud Horse Trail system there. That's a trail running along the Highway 89 corridor there, and they're proposing that they allow mountain bikes on portions of that network of trails. So if you'd like to provide feedback on that, you could do so. I'll put a link in the description below. I will say Park Junkie's all in favor of biking in national parks. I do think there are some trails that shouldn't have bikes, but I certainly think there are some trails that should have ability for cyclists. I'm not talking about e-bikes here. I'm talking about actual mountain bikes. I know some parks, such as Mammoth Cave National Park here south of here in Kentucky, has a pretty nice mountain biking network of trails, and it's a lot of fun. Those designed for mountain bikers, and that is an area which I think we can see an example of a park that is implementing a mountain biking introduction into their plans, and I think it's going pretty well down there. So I'd like to see Glen Canyon do this as well, personally. I don't think it would negate the hiking experience there on the Stud Horse Trail system. But as I said, I do think there are some trails in national parks, a great number of trails in national parks, where we should not have mountain biking. But that is going to be an area that I don't see a problem with that. Now, in other news coming out of the national parks, we'll look at a couple of stories that revolve around winter access in national parks, starting with Mount Rainier up in Washington. The Park Service announced that beginning November 29th, the park will maintain vehicle access to the Paradise region of the park on Saturdays and Sundays only. However, the Longmire region of the park down there at the southwest corner, that area will remain open 7 days a week. So you can get into Longmire. However, you'll only be able to get into Paradise on weekends only, moving through the winter season. Mount Rainier, spectacular park. I worked there back in the day for a season at Longmire, and it's a great place to pull in, grab a cup of coffee there, and sit by the fireplace for a moment. Really nice little location down there in the corner, and I've never been there in the winter, but I imagine the area is fairly inhospitable. But it could be really cool to visit other parks. Zion National Park, yeah, that's right. Zion suspending the shuttle systems there in Zion Canyon for the winter months. The shuttle system was suspended as of November 27th, so you can once again drive a private vehicle up into Zion Canyon. during the summer seasons when the shuttles are running, the spring, summer, and fall, I should say, when the shuttles are running, you cannot drive private vehicles into the canyon without a reservation at the Zion Canyon Lodge. However, you can access that during the winter season, but you must keep in mind that the shuttle system will be resuming on December 23rd and running through January 1st. So that Christmas season, they do reintroduce the shuttle system for that 10-day period, and you will be unable to drive your private vehicle into the canyon without a reservation at the Zion Canyon Lodge during that 10-day period. However, on January 2nd, they will suspend the shuttle service again, and you will once again be able to drive into the canyon. Death Valley National Park announcing that they've reopened Cottonwood Canyon and Marble Canyon backcountry roads. Park Service crews, as we know, have been battling battling a lot of flash flood damage that took place there in August of this year, with Death Valley receiving record floods this year. And they've reopened these roads as of Wednesday, November 23rd. NPS road crews reestablished these backcountry routes. However, a free permit is now required to camp along these backcountry routes. This permit, it says there are 10 campsites along Cottonwood Canyon and 4 along the Marble Canyon Road. And the permits are currently free. You can visit their website to learn how to acquire a free permit. It says roadside camping has greatly increased over the past decade as sites filled. People drove off the roads to create new sites. Don't be a dumbass. Don't drive off the roads to create new sites. Come on, let's not do that. If you do that, you're just instigating the ability for more regulations to come in. Just please have some respect and stay in not designated campsites in this area. Now they're requiring you to stay in designated campsites. But if you have areas that are rural that don't have designated campsites, but there's a pullout, just use the pullouts and camp there. Don't go driving off into the wilderness to try to camp in your own area. Let's try to have some respect for the environment and also the respect for the ability of people to sort of police themselves with this thing. It says by limiting roadside camping to designated sites, the NPS hopes campers can experience the solitude and quiet of surrounding wilderness while limiting the human impact on the desert. So right now those permits are free. I wonder how long that will be the case. And as long as they're not requiring reservations for those campsites. All right. Moving on, with the Christmas season coming up on us here, the National Christmas Tree at President's Park. Yeah, President's Park, that's the White House. The National Christmas Display is open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday through Sunday through January 1st. But the tree will be lit daily about sunset. So if you want to check out the lighting of that tree, you can do so sometime around sunset between now and the beginning of 2023. Now, this tree was first lit by Calvin Coolidge back in 1923. The National Christmas Tree, the release says, the National Christmas Tree continues to inspire people to enjoy cherished traditions and memories made with family and friends in national parks during the holiday season. So if you're in the Washington area and you want to check out the lighting of the Christmas tree, you can do that. If Park Junkie's around over there, I'll certainly be checking that out, and I'll give you guys a little broadcast of that. I may be over there soon. Who knows? We'll see what happens. And in our final story of the day, a happy birthday to one of my favorite parks, Everglades National Park down in Florida. That's right, Florida's 1.5 million acre contribution to the national park, celebrating its 75th birthday. December 6th of 1947, the president signed legislation that was previously passed by Congress to authorize the park. It was actually authorized back in 1934. Everglades, the first national park that wasn't really a national park set aside for its glorious vistas. The Everglades, if you've ever been there, it's not Yellowstone, it's not Yosemite, it's not Zion, it's not the Grand Canyon, it's the Everglades. It's a completely different landscape. And as Marjorie Stoneman Douglas said in her 1947 book, The Everglades River of Grass, there are no other Everglades anywhere on earth. And she was absolutely right. It's a tough park to fall in love with, but if you do, and if you have the experiences that I've had down in the Everglades, out sailing around on the Florida Bay and canoeing through the backcountries of the park there, it's an absolutely spectacular place. And some of the scenes that I've witnessed down in the Everglades, I know I'll never witness anywhere else on the face of the earth. So a spectacular landscape. And if you're down there and you get the chance to visit the park, please do so, and wish the Everglades a happy 75th while you're there. Well, friends, that's going to wrap it up for today's National Park Newscast. All the news that's fit to print from your national parks. If you want to support the channel, once again, you can do so through jumping down in the store. Perhaps consider purchasing a t-shirt, sweatshirt, coffee mug, or sticker to show your support for the Park Junkie Project and public access to public lands. If you would like to check me out over at parkjunkie.com, please do so. I'm producing a little blog over there, and I also have guides to all 63 national parks there on the website. You can check me out at the Park Junkie on Instagram, Park Junkie on Twitter and Facebook as well. Friends, I'll be checking back in with some more updates soon. Try to get some more hiking videos released in the upcoming weeks as well. Thanks for tuning in. As always, have a great day. Cheers.